Why do leaders avoid feedback? That's the question we're here to answer today. And by the end of this video, I am going to share with you some practical tips to help reframe your thinking, to help get you better at this very crucial skill that is needed, not just in leadership, but in the workplace in general, right? We want a feedback culture. Feedback is the only way that we can continue to grow and get better. And I know that if you're watching this video, you're a leader who cares about their people because you're taking the time to invest in your own professional development. And that right there, you caring, is the number one reason that leaders avoid giving feedback. Most of the time, it's coming from caring a lot about the person, about the team. You're wanting to protect something by not giving the feedback. You're wanting to protect the relationship. You're wanting to protect the person. You're wanting to protect the timing and make it absolutely perfect in your delivery. But let me just tell you that perfection is a fool's errand, and sometimes it is better to speak in a way that is not perfect, imperfection in the way that you deliver versus not delivering at all. So I see this all the time. We notice something like one of our direct reports, they miss a deadline by a couple days. Maybe in a meeting, they are exhibiting behavior that is maybe not best in class. Maybe we need to help them learn how to manage their facial expressions so that they are not giving all of their cards away through mere expression on face. Maybe it's that you have just noticed something off with them, but you don't really know what it is, and you're like, oh, should I ask, should I not ask, right? And so you're thinking to yourself, well, is it really that big of a deal? Is it something I need to address? Can it wait? I don't want to make things awkward, right? All of these things are perfectly reasonable to be thinking, but while you as the leader are sitting and thinking through all of these things and wondering when or if you should deliver the feedback, the behavior that occurred, if it is systemic, is going to continue occurring. And once you have behavior that continues to repeat, now you're dealing with not just one moment in time, you're actually dealing with a pattern. And trust me when I say this to you, that a pattern is much harder to dismantle and correct than a singular moment in time where you are only addressing that one behavior and course correcting it very, very quickly after it happened. So it normally comes down to protection, uncertainty, and delay. And while all three of these areas are perfectly reasonable and rational, none of them are actually neutral. And at the end of the day, this does end up costing us as leaders, and we're going to talk about what that cost is as we work through this video. So the first area I'd like to focus on is protection. I don't want to damage the relationship. I don't want to make it awkward. That's usually where it starts. It's not a big deal. And it doesn't come from a bad place, right? But avoidance does not actually protect the relationship, even though you feel like it does. It actually changes it. If you're someone's leader, your people want to know that you trust them enough with the truth. When you avoid feedback, you as the leader are actually doing more harm than you are good, because you are preventing that person from getting objective information that is going to help them grow in their professional career. People need that from you in order to continue growing and developing. To be clear with your folks is to be kind. Now, it may not always feel nice. There's this concept of nice versus kind. But for me, kindness versus somebody just being nice will win every single time. I'd rather someone be kind than be nice. The second area is uncertainty. I don't know how to say this, right? I'm not sure how I should phrase this. I don't know how to have this conversation without making it super awkward. And so I'm just unsure of how to approach or when to approach. And so as you're kind of, spinning out in your mind over this situation, you end up getting to a point where it becomes too late to even say anything at all. And in that silence, nothing gets clarified. Your person is either completely oblivious and unaware to the issue, or they may think that the issue is something completely different than what you as the leader have identified it to be. And the moral of the story is, if nothing is clarified, people will fill in those gaps on their own. And when you stay quiet, you're leaving a lot of room for personal interpretation of that story. And side note, when people write their own stories and are given room to do that without any other objective viewpoint coming into the frame, most of the time, they're not the ones who need improvement. Like rarely, if ever, are people self-aware enough to say, it was me. I'm the problem. It's me. Most of the time, they find a way to disperse that blame into other areas. So without objective feedback, the default state is to make the fault not their own. And third, delay, right? I'll address it later. I'll wait for the right moment. There's never going to be a right moment. But the longer it's delayed, the more it gets reinforced. That's the important thing. The longer you delay giving the feedback, the longer the feedback can continue, and therefore it gets reinforced, whether it's intentional or unintentional on your part. If you haven't said anything, you are feeding into allowing that behavior to continue. And when something goes unaddressed, people don't default to objective clarity, right? Like that's not the state that we all go to. We go to an interpretation state. We start asking ourselves, well, did I do okay? Was my performance as expected? I mean, they haven't said anything, so like, does this even matter? And over time, people's interpretations become their own realities. And remember, everybody only has a sample size of one, right? We are all navigating the world on our own, and we are only privy to what we see, what we hear, and what we observe on a daily basis. And so it's the leader's role to come into that perspective and provide that objective third-party insight. Objective, not subjective, not if it felt like you were, no, I saw you do, you did, right? Action words, we want to have it be observable behavior. We'll get to that in another video. But people's perceptions become their realities, and their perceptions of this story is going to become their reality. And that, my friends, is how standards start to drift, how confusion builds, and how inconsistency starts to show up across your team. And it's in this moment that what felt small starts to add up and actually compound over time. So let's look at what it's actually costing us, right? How delaying feedback becomes more expensive than you mean for it to be, and in more ways than one. So remember, when we delay having a conversation, we are no longer addressing a single moment in time when we finally get to it. We now have to address something that's become a pattern. It's been reinforced, again, intentionally or unintentionally. If it's not addressed, it becomes reinforced. And then, if and when you finally do address it, oh my goodness, it feels so much bigger than it needed to. It feels so much more emotional. It feels more personal. And a lot of times people are caught off guard and they're like, well, why you're giving me 5 or 6 different examples of this thing. Why didn't you tell me right when it happened? And you can explain to them, well, I wanted to wait for the right moment. I didn't want to damage the relationship. But think about that. If you end up in this conversation with this person and they look at you and they ask you, why did you wait so long? Are any of those rational reasons we talked about at the beginning going to feel rational when you're explaining it to the person who's asking you, why didn't you trust me with this feedback when it first occurred? So avoiding feedback, always a trade-off, right? Always. Sure, you're going to get that short-term comfort, but it's at the expense of not just the long-term clarity for your team, but also you as the leader, your long-term credibility with your team. Because credibility is built through consistency. And if you're not consistent with delivering feedback, good feedback, constructive feedback, all feedback, if you're not consistent, your team is going to notice that inconsistency, and that is not only going to damage their long-term clarity for standards, but it's also going to damage your long-term credibility with your team. So yeah, great. You got the short-term comfort. You kept things feeling smooth in that moment, but if it's costing you that long-term clarity and if it's costing you your long-term credibility, is it even worth it? Because if you're allowing them to fill in the gaps on their own, that's where trust is going to start to erode, especially if you come at them 6 weeks, 8 weeks later with a whole laundry list of things that they have been doing that they need to improve upon, all kind of in the same vein. your trust on your team is going to start to erode. It starts to erode quietly. They're going to start to escalate sideways. It's just not a good situation. Always better to address up front at the expense of that short-term comfort. So now, the reframe for us as leaders. You are not actually protecting the relationship by avoiding the feedback. You're actually delaying clarity of expectations, which is what helps your people feel grounded, confident, and trusted, and again, is the #1 predictor of employee engagement. That doesn't come from me. That comes from Gallup's most recent engagement reporting survey. The #1 predictor of employee engagement is clarity of expectations. And where does clarity of expectations come from? It comes from providing in-the-moment feedback, timely and as in the moment as possible. So clear does not have to mean unkind. Direct doesn't need to mean disrespectful. In fact, I think we are actually exhibiting more disrespect by not trusting our people with the ability to accept our feedback and knowing that they want our feedback because they're wanting to continue to grow. So delaying the conversation doesn't protect anyone long term, and avoiding it altogether, that can really cause some damage. So the question really is not, is feedback uncomfortable? Like, it usually is. Unless you're giving like really positive feedback, feedback is super uncomfortable to give. But it's one of the main jobs that you have as a leader. Like, that is a core function of your role. So the question is not, is it uncomfortable? The real question for us becomes, well, what's the cost of not speaking up? Because in leadership, what you don't address doesn't stay small. It builds, it spreads, and eventually, I promise you, it starts to shape the culture and define the culture that you are leading. Every single unaddressed moment resets the standard. In the next video, I'm going to break down what effective feedback actually sounds like. That way, you're not just aware of, problem, but we have a solution, and you'll have access to the tools that you need to help you handle it in the moment as effectively as possible. So if you're interested in practical leadership insights like this, consider subscribing. New videos will be posted weekly. Thank you.